video we're going to look at join as you go, and we're going to look at two methods. We're going to look firstly at joining granny squares, and then we're going to have a look at joining motifs with chained edges. And this technique works really well for motifs that are made in the round, so obviously granny squares fall into that category. And what it is, it's just a way of, rather than making a pile of completed motifs, if you look here, I've got 4 round granny square here. You could, of course, make a pile of these and then join them all together once you've made as many as you want, lay it all out and do it that way. But what join as you go does is, if you see here, I've got a second square which is not complete, it's just got 3 rounds. And when I make that final round, at the same time, I'm going to join it to this first block. So my blanket kind of grows in a different way, it grows as I work. So that is what join as you go is all about. And the way that it works fundamentally is you just sort of replace a chain in your pattern. You replace one of the chains with a joining stitch so that the two end up joined together without any extra work. So I'll show you what I mean. We'll start with granny squares and then we'll move on to the chained edged motifs. So with this technique, you have to start block number 1, or motif number 1 has to be fully complete. So as I said, I'm choosing to make 4 round grannies here, and you can see this granny square is complete. It's got 4 rounds, there's nothing left to do on it. The next one that I'm going to join, so motif 2 or block 2, as you can see, it has only got 3 rounds on it. So I'm going to make that 4th round and join it to block number 1 as I go along. This is the side that I'm going to join. So I need to start in the bottom right of my block 2 here, and I'm going to join into the bottom left of block 1. Okay, so that is the join that's going to happen. I'm going to move them slightly so that it's a sort of more natural position for me to crochet into. And I will start in this corner in the normal way. There's nothing different to begin with how you would make a regular granny square. So I'm going to start by making 3 chain, and that's going to count as my first treble. And just at this point, a little reminder that we are working UK terminology. Okay, so that three chain work counts as my first treble, and I will do 2 more, and this forms the first cluster at the corner. Okay, now as you know, in the corner of a granny square, we make 1 cluster, then we make 3 chain to go around the corner, and then we'll make a second cluster. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to replace the second of those 3 chain with a joining stitch, and in this case it will be a slip stitch. So I'll show you what I mean. So the first of the 3 chain is worked in the normal way. The second, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take my hook and put it through that corresponding corner space and just pull through and make a slip stitch. So the second chain becomes a slip stitch in this case. Okay, and then the 3rd chain is worked in the normal way. Okay, so that middle chain of 3 became the slip stitch, which is what has initially started the join to the first block here. So now I can go back in and finish my corner in the normal way. 1, just release some yarn, 2 and 3, and that is the corner completed. Now if I take my hook out, you will see how it actually will sit. Let's just move the yarn, it's a bit tricky because I don't want to pull it, but you will see that the second cluster that I've made in the corner there sits neatly against the first cluster that it is kind of worked along this side of block number 1. All right, so it corresponds quite nicely, and when I gently pull that apart, you can see that the slip stitch has secured it secured them well together. Okay, so that's the first join we've made there. Now the second one we're going to do with the granny squares is a little bit different to what we've just done here, in that all I'm going to do is actually put a double crochet into the next chain space on my block number 1. Now ordinarily I would be making a chain, wouldn't I, to hop across to the next space on my work here. I'd be making 1 chain to hop across here, but all I've done is replace that chain with that double crochet to join. So I'm ready now to hop across to the next chain space and make my 3 treble into there, just again in the normal way of making a granny square. and we're ready to move on again. And so again, normally I'd be making a chain to hop across, but I'm not doing that. I'm going to put a double crochet into the next chain space. So from front to back, pulling through, making a double crochet. Again, just a reminder, UK terminology. Let's do one more and then we'll stop and have a look at what it looks like. So back, making my cluster into the next chain space. So putting that double crochet in there moves us across sufficiently to be able to do our next cluster without it pulling or anything like that. And if you see, it now lines up perfectly to be able to put my double crochet into the next one. Okay, and this is a bit unnatural how I'm working because I'm trying to keep it flat to show you, but you'll get the gist of this. Let me just stop there and I'll just take my hook out and you can see what's happened. Okay, so we started down at this corner and that join was made with a slip stitch, and as we've worked up, you can see, just see the little double crochets holding on there, and if I pull that apart you can see how securely that is actually joined. Okay, and we're now at the point where we've got to our corner again, and we're going to work that exactly as we did at the beginning. So let's just get that done. Okay, so there's no chain or anything needed to get to that corner because we've moved along sufficiently with that little double crochet. So we make our first cluster in the corner as normal, 2 and 3, and again we're going to use, as we always do, a 3 chain to get around the corner. The first chain is worked in the normal way, if you remember. The second becomes a slip stitch, so I will go front to back through that chain space at the top there, pull through, make a slip stitch. The third chain is worked in the normal way, so it's unchanged. So I can now carry on and finish my corner. Okay, and now I go back to my normal pattern. So now I will put 1 chain in there to hop across to my next space to make my next cluster. Okay, so it's only on that joining edge that you make any change to your regular pattern. Otherwise you just go back to your normal, much loved granny pattern. So I'm just going to finish this last round so you will see the effect of a completed second square, and you can see I'm working around this and it's completely unchanged by what we've done on that first side. So just quickly finish it. Okay, that's the last cluster finished. I will make 1 chain and slip stitch to close the round. Just snip that, pull that through, and I'll deal with that in a minute. But if you look, if you remember, we started with our completed block on the right hand side, and we worked that joined edge like so, and then I finished the rest of the round, and we've now got 2 completed granny squares side by side already joined. And of course that's going to work totally fine if you want to add blocks wherever you want to work, add them, or if you want to do them in lines, or however you want to do them, as long as you you know, join along the edge that they're butting up against, you've got yourself a really neat, really quick way to join granny squares. Right, we're going to move on now and look at a different sort of motif, still worked in the round. This is actually from the Summer Palace pattern. I've just worked it in different colours. It's such a beautiful motif, isn't it? It's worked in the round, and as you can see, the edges of it are sort of chain based, and it works in a very similar way to that we've just done, in that we replace one of the chains with a joining stitch, in this case a slip stitch, and so exactly the same principle. And what you can see here is so this is my completed one. As you know, we have to start with 1 completed one. This is motif number 1, fully complete, nothing else needs to be done to this. Motif number 2 here, you can see I have worked actually quite a lot of the last round. That's completely fine. You can work to the point where you want to join, or you can start with the join. It doesn't matter, as long as you leave the part that needs joining undone. Okay, so you can see I've I've partially worked this, and I'm now going to finish this round by joining block 2 to block 1, or motif 2 to motif 1. Okay, so my pattern here is, if you see, I've got sort of this lovely little, got a couple of treble clusters in here, and then just some chains and a double crochet. So I'm going to get to the point where I'm ready to join. So I've got 3 chain in there, 1 double crochet, 3 chain, and now my joining point, if you look at them, if I hold them together, that's how they need to be joined, with those 2 elements of the motif together. So I'm now about to start that. So the first part, as you know, we're replacing chains, aren't we? So because of that, the first part is unaffected, because I've got a treble 3 together there. So this is the first treble 3 together. I'm not really focusing on the stitches themselves. I want to show you the join, so don't worry too much about this. So this is where I'm going to start joining. I've got 3 chain between those treble 3 together, and it works just as we worked on the granny square. So my first chain is unaffected. My second chain becomes that slip stitch. So front to back through that chain space, the sort of corresponding chain space, front to back through there, pull my yarn through and make a slip stitch. Okay, so the second of the 3 chains becomes that joining stitch, which is a slip stitch in this case, and then 1 more chain, which is the unaffected one, and I finish my pattern, so which in this case is this treble 3 together. 2 and 3, and that is now joined. You can see that is joined. So I've got 2 places to join this, so we're going to repeat that little pattern. So 3 chain, I beg your pardon, 1 double crochet. I'm not joining there because if you look, it's too far. That is not a join. We're going to do the next one. 3 chain. The first element here, if you recall, is unimpacted. 2 and 3 together, and now here we go, ready for that join. So we've got 3 chain, first chain unaffected, second chain becomes that slip stitch, so go through the chain space front to back, make into a slip stitch, and the third chain made as normal. Now I can complete this round, and I'll just do that and show you how it looks. 1, 2, 3, and slip stitch into the top here. Okay, so we have now got a really pretty join, and when I sort of pull that apart as if it has been blocked, you can see how it sort of continues the pattern. It continues this sort of star shape happening. I will be joining other motifs here and here, and then to each other, and it's just beautiful. Chain edge motifs worked in Join As You Go just are absolutely lovely. So not a complicated technique once you know what you're doing, once you know what you're replacing and why and where, and a real time saver actually. So I hope you've enjoyed that technique, and I hope it helps you.